Good morning. Um, what do we talk about this morning? Well, let's start off. I'm busy. I'm still defining my morality. So we're talking about defining establishing your own values and defining your own morality because this is thinking for yourself. It's not just like, for example, I was going to come on here and I was going to say about how religions they prevent you developing your faculty of reason. They're supposed to be about developing your faculty of reason, but they prevent you from developing your faculty of reason because really it's about control and power and everything else. We know all that sort of thing, but you see, I was watching a film last night called Love, Sex and Other Drugs, and I didn't watch much of it now. I only watched about half an hour of it because like it was just like, well, you know what it was like. It was about it's on Netflix. It was about the pharmaceutical industry and capitalising on the misery of others, and basically growing this industry and taking market share and everything else. But I don't want to come on here and be like Slavoj Zizek, like, because saying from a superficial level, saying, oh, you cunts, so they're wrong, they're right, they're wrong, this is wrong, they're wrong to do this. And I'm not even saying that about religion as well, because basically, like, the wise man blames no one. Okay, you might critique them, but I'm not blaming them because you have to understand that everything is a reason. And if you seek to understand this reason, that really, like, unless you have experience, it's very hard to actually have any conceptual experiences to contemplate, and this applies at an individual level and a collective level. So really, like, you could say, like, like Carl Jung said, the first 40 years are about gaining experience, and then it's a matter of using that experience to actually think about where you're going from here. So really, like, it's sort of like slavery and emancipation, like, but first of all, you have to do your period as a slave in order to gain the experience. So it's like master and slave morality, which is another binary opposite. But it's sort of like you have to do the slavery period. Now you can apply this to all aspects of life, but you more or less have to do the slavery period before you can actually um, uh, have enough knowledge to actually, well, to drive the sun chariot or to drive your own chariot. So, for example, like, you can't have the reins of the chariot until you're able to drive the fucking chariot. Or you can do mutiny on the bounty if you like. You can do mutiny on the bounty if you want. You can rear up and you say, I'm taking over this fucking ship, but you can't. What point when you can't sail the ship? And nearly the best thing to do is just fucking relax your cacks and sit back and rather than getting your knickers in a twist or saying, oh, I'm a slave, learn how, use this time wisely to learn how to sail the fucking ship. And then you can take the ship if you feel you're capable of taking the ship. Or you might even be just given the ship. The reins will be handed to you if you just chill. Do you know what I'm saying? But really, what's causing people a lot of misery is people telling everybody why they're suffering, why they're suffering, why they're suffering. It's sort of hard to explain this because I don't really want to blame anybody, but everybody has a role. It's like Dr. Grease there that I see there. She coming on saying, "Oh, my passion is to empower people to be this, that." That's not really her. Well, well, it's not really our passion. Really, our passion is money. Like, really, that's our fucking passion, is money. And well, it is, like, I'm not judging her, but it's obvious. Like, so she's emailing me, telling me how miserable I fucking am, and writing a narrative for me to identify with as to how miserable I am. Because really, like, what we have here is we have a whole society of people who don't think for themselves, but yet they're miserable and they can't understand why they're miserable. So when somebody comes along and presents them with a narrative as to why they're miserable, oh, you need to be fucking striving towards a goal, you need to have a goal, you need to have, oh, you're depressed for this reason, oh, you're anxious for this reason, oh, it's fear of missing out, oh, it's fucking, but there's so many reasons as to why you're suffering. But basically, like, first of all, there has to be an understanding of nature, and then to even begin to understand why you're suffering, and then you can because maybe you're suffering because you're inflicting suffering on others, but it might be completely unintentional. You're just doing what is in your nature to do, but you can't learn any empathy unless you yourself are suffering, and then you ask the fucking fundamental question: why am I suffering? Why am I suffering? And yeah, and then it's sort of like the myth of Sisyphus. It's sort of like, without actually asking why am I suffering, you just consider to go around and around in circles. And love and sex is really one of these examples of people really need to start repeating the same shit over and over again, because it's just a continuous cycle of repeating the same. I'm not even going to call them mistakes, just the same behaviors over and over again, without actually giving any thought to why they're suffering. Now when you start to think like this, for example, like my mother used to say that sex is for the procreation of life. This is about establishing your own values and defining your own morality. But my mother used to say that sex is for the procreation of life. Now, I can very well understand why my mother would say this. My mother's an intelligent woman, but she used to always say sex is for the procreation of life, and she used to say that when you're bored, poor people entertain themselves by having sex, and this is true, and this compounds the misery, because then you have poor people who can hardly afford to feed themselves, and next thing they're fucking 13 kids. And this was big Irish families, and as a result of Christian values who said to them there was no sex before marriage, and sex is for the procreation of life. Now then you have people who are poor as shit, so they don't see, they're taught to embrace their poverty, piety, chastity, and then there's no sex before marriage. But as my mother said to me then, off the back of these Christian values, she said, like, now my mother's an intelligent woman, but she was just reared with these Christian values, and she told me later in life then that she said, when we were we were of the opinion that when you got married, that kids just came along. So this is like sort of like, so she got married, and she said kids just came along. She said next thing there was 7 of us, and she was smoking 40 major a day, and the outlet was smoking 40 major a day, because 7 kids. Next thing, kids just came along and says, Jesus Christ, there's 7 kids, and they're like, talk about ADHD and all this shit. We were wild, like, we were fucking wild. And this is my point. You needed the 40 major a day until such time as she adapted and developed coping mechanisms, which she did do, because as I said, she's an intelligent woman, she did adapt. But the stress initially caused her to have asthma, which because it impacts on your gene expression, and stress is one of the things that activates the asthmatic gene in those genetically disposed to this condition. But stress will activate this gene. They're linked, like stress and asthma are linked. So basically, like, if you want to treat your asthma, I would advise you to learn some philosophy and learn some coping mechanisms, and you'll find that this will alleviate your asthma better than any drugs. But Yeah, but then she developed coping mechanisms, and as a result, then my mother is one of the most stoic women you'll ever meet. Because let me tell you, it'll take a lot to stress out my mother. I've only ever seen her cry once, but yeah, but back to the sex, and then uh, my soul then says this to me as well, like, sex is for the procreation of life, and really, like, one of the reasons, like, when eternal life was offered to me, one of the reasons I say I'm rejecting this, I have no interest in eternal life, is because I want to do what I like. I want to do what I like. In other words, I want to establish my own values and define my own morality, and I don't want them. I don't want them. Uh, for example, like, if I was to, it's the same. If you want love, what do you do for love? If you want money, what do you do for money? And all these carrots will impact on your moral choices and will impact on your values and defining your values and morality. But if you, this is the beauty of wanting nothing, is you get to really think about these things and think about your desires and aversions and intent, your desires and your aversions and your intent, because these are the most important things that determine your fate, that determine your life. And these are the things that you really need to make the most conscious: your desires, aversions, and intent, especially your intent. And be brutally honest regarding your desires, aversions, and intent, especially your fucking intent. No, especially all three. Yeah, all three. Your desires, aversions, and intent. So when my soul said to me, sex is for the procreation of life, this is like everything else in life, all your conceptual experiences, this being a conceptual experience as well, is a hypothesis for reason, a hypothesis for reason. So I would retort and I would say, I don't agree with that. I don't agree with that. Sex is for the procreation of life. But then this would be a rule, and I say there are no rules. There are no rules. And I keep reiterating this, and I would say that making rules, for example, Peterson making these rules and his universals, and these universals morals, is what's causing all the misery, and then causing them to profit from these miseries, for example, and the church the same. These universal values, the Christian values, is what causes a lot of the misery and the poverty and the misery, basically. Yeah, misery, which all they had to alleviate this misery was to seek spiritual guidance. Which this is how they grew a fucking empire, on seeking spiritual guidance. By compounding people's misery and then offering them spirituality as a you know what I'm saying? And psychiatry the same, and psychology the same, making all these universals. You need a goal. This is why you're depressed. This is why you're anxious. But universal generalizations and universal things. But really, what I'm aiming to do in these videos is encouraging people. Like, okay, yes, I am doing the same thing. I am. This is about, my intent is ideological segregation. I'm looking um, to find people that think like me, women that think like me, in order to build an empire, because of matriarchy as opposed to patriarchy. But also the stigmatized and other ethnic minorities, because it's about an inversion of the hierarchies. But this is in accordance with nature. More or less, I was asked, would I like to do this role? Would I take on this role? And I said, yeah, why not? Sure, let's do this. And we decided we'll do this together. But let me tell you, um, in order to teach you to think for yourselves, I have to lead by example. I have to think for myself. So when it comes to sex is for the procreation of life, I have to think for myself. But basically, then what applies to me doesn't apply to you, because you're of all different natures and different conceptual experiences, and you have to think for yourself, and you have to establish your own values in relation to sex and define your own morality in relation to sex. But I will share mine. I haven't got time now, but I will share mine. But let me tell you, she's quite a deep and profound, like it's a separate rabbit hole in itself, and you can stay digging. But I wanted to spend this video because this is the subject I'm on at the moment. But basically, like the first thing I do is I will finish by this video by saying I refute this idea that sex is for just for the procreation of life. This is not true. This is not true. It's a bonding hormone, which you have to be very careful who you want to bond to. And there's a lot of other considerations that have to be factored in as well, but I may go